Hey, it's Patrick, and let's talk about everything you need to know for choosing the right S&S Cycle cam for your motorcycle. What I'm going to talk about today is kind of specifically going to be about twin cams and M8s, but some of the concepts will also transfer over to Sportsters. The first thing we're going to talk about is how to choose the right cam for your build. The second thing we'll talk about is all the things that are a good idea if it's within your budget to do while you're doing those cams, and what those upgrades are in the cam chest. And finally, we'll talk about any special tools you'll need to do the job. And it's worth noting that we have videos on how to install twin cam cams, M8 cams, gear drive and chain drive, as well as Sportster cams. So we'll put some links in the description that link you to those install videos where we literally walk you through step by step how to do all of these installs. First up though, let's talk about which cam is right for your build. And that is a really wide open subject, depending on, of course, the type of motorcycle you're building. But when it goes to choosing cams, we're going to keep it pretty simple. There's a lot of specs out there. When you look at that chart full of S&S cams, you're going to see a lot of different numbers. There's two basic ones I want to talk about and how they relate to the motor, and that is lift and duration. So lift and duration are going to determine, it's going to put you in a box, let's say, of which cam to determine based on the compression ratio of your motorcycle and the valve spring setup. So what I mean by that is the lift of the cam. That is literally the physical amount that is lifted by the cam lobe, which opens your valve. This big bump right here, that's the lift. The duration is how long it holds that valve open, and that more relates to that compression ratio. But let's break it down. So your valve springs in your head, if they are a stock, are only set up for a certain amount of lift. Normally on those S&S charts or in the description on the website, it'll tell you this is good for stock valve springs or you need upgraded valve springs. So generally speaking, if you have a stock head on your bike, those cams that have bigger lifts probably won't work well with your lighter modified engine, let's say. So that is one parameter. The lift will be kind of determined by your valve train setup. The other part of that is compression ratio. So if you don't have if you don't have like extra compression or like a hot rodded bike where you put a big bore in it and it bumped the compression up, the longer those valves stay open, there's more valve overlap there is, you actually kind of lose power if you don't have more compression in the bike. So say you have a stock motor bike, but you put some big giant cam in it, bro, where actually it's not going to run that great. In fact, it's going to be pretty soft off the bottom. And again, the description in these is really good from S&S. They kind of push you in the right direction for your cam setup, but that's what you're going to want to look at. If you have a lightly modified or stock motor, you want kind of shorter duration numbers and that lift number that will work with your valve spring setup. So say you've landed on a cam, whether it's an M8 or a twin cam, you're like, I want this, 570 cam, or if it's an M8, you're like, I'm going with this 475. Now, on the M8s, you basically have two choices after that. You can either get chain drive setup or gear drive setup. You have that option in a twin cam as well, but there's a few more questions. So let's just start with gear drive versus chain drive. Gear drive is generally thought of as a more hot rod setup. And really the install, I wouldn't say is harder one way or the other. The main difference with gear drive, it is direct drive. You have actual gears that fit together that drive those cams off of your output shaft of your flywheel. So that there's some limitations there, meaning that you have to have less than 3/1000ths run out in your flywheel. We have a video covering that too and how to measure that. What that means is that flywheel has to be very dialed in, so to speak. Otherwise, if those flywheels were ever to shift, it would cause you a catastrophic failure. And unfortunately, especially on a lot of the earlier twin cams, those flywheels will shift. Harley is kind of notorious for having that shift or having that run out not being great. But if you're doing a bigger build where you're using a set of S&S flywheels, those things are dead nuts. They're not going to move. That would be a good option for gear drive. Gear drives are more efficient. Realistically, you're probably only going to get about an extra 3 horsepower at the wheel using gear drives. Is it a better setup? Yes. Is it applicable for most people? I would say no. With the chain drives, you have more room for error. Let's say your flywheel can be a little farther out, run out. If it ever shifts just a little bit, unless you're doing a bottom end modification, I'd probably stick with chain drive. All that applies to twin cam as well, except we have a few more things to think about. cam chain tensioners. The early twin cams, let's say 06 and back, had the spring-style cam chain tensioners, and they will fail. We have a set in the bike behind me. That's why this bike is apart, because those chain tensioners fail. What I mean by fail is they just wear out. That spring tension stays on the chain, and it just burns through after a while. And if you don't catch them in time, bad juju for the engine. The reason I bring that up is because you can convert, like we're doing this bike, you can convert to the later hydraulic setup. So if you convert to that hydraulic setup, you're not going to have that failure problem that the spring-style tensioners had. So you can convert your early model cams. So if you're putting cams in 06 and earlier, even if you haven't had a failure, I would go ahead and convert to that hydraulic style. What it's going to do is just going to change your cam plate a little bit, and it's going to set it up for those hydraulic tensioners. Now, again, if you're going to keep your stock cam plate, which we'll get to in section 2 here, you can't make the conversion. So to do the hydraulic conversion, you have to convert the cam plate over. 07 and later, you already have hydraulic setups, so you're going to have to choose between gear and chain drive. And there's one other thing. We have 2 types of cams here. These are both twin cam setups. This is a later model. This is an earlier model. But you can see right here, we have this little contraption right here. This is something you only get from S&S, and this is an easy start cam. I've ran these in 2 bikes, and I highly, highly recommend these, especially if you're raising compression level on your bike or you have a hard starting bike. What this little mechanism does, you can see when this is the closed, when the bike's running, the lifter is running right here and it's not touching. When the bike is getting ready to be started, this little bump stays right there and it holds that lifter open, which pushes the valve open 30 thousandths, boom, and makes the bike start easier. And once the engine starts to spin, this moves over and it just operates on the cam lobe like it's supposed to. People get a little bit of cold feet on this because they're worried about a failure. Never ever heard of one of these failing, and it definitely helps those bikes start. It's like having a really big built-in compression release in your bike. So this is a non-easy start cam. See, the mechanism's gone. This would just ride around, the lifter would just ride around on here like normal, and you wouldn't get the benefit of that easy starting. Now you've picked your cam, but when you go into that cam chest to do the work, you could just do the cams, use your stock plate, use your stock oil pump, use your stock push rods, and get the job done. But it's the same amount of work. You're going to be doing the same amount of work, and you're going to be able to upgrade a bunch of things. So if it's in your budget to do some upgrades, this is definitely the time to do it when you're doing the cam job. Let's take a look at some of these upgrades. So you can just do your cam job, put a new set of cams in your bike, use all of your old parts, but you're going to be doing the same amount of work as if you upgraded a bunch of parts in the cam chest. So if it's within your budget to upgrade parts, I highly recommend making these upgrades while you're doing this job. The first thing I'll start with is the quickie push rods. And this is going to be applicable for both M8 and twin cam. All of the upgrades here are going to be available for Milwaukee 8 engines as well as twin cams. This first one is applicable to Sportsters as well, and that is the quickie push rod. If you're going to be doing these cam jobs and using your stock push rod, it is a solid push rod, meaning there's no adjustment. It is a solid piece of tubing. So when you go to take that apart, you have to take off the top part of your motor, the rockers at the top, to slide those push rods out to get access to the cams, so on and so forth. Same thing, putting it back. You got to put the push rods back in there and put the top of the motor back together. If you use these quickies, you can literally bolt cutter those push rods out, and these collapse far enough like this, you can put these in there. And then, of course, they are adjustable to get you back to where you need to go. Adjustable push rods are great anyway. These are extra great because it saves you a lot of time in taking parts apart on the top of the bike you would need to. So even if you're just going to be doing that cam, highly recommend using a set of quickie push rods. These kits actually come with the push rod tubes that match these, so you can take the tubes in and out. They're available in chrome and black. So no matter what kind of, you have Sportster, twin cam, or M8, this will really speed up your install time. Now, while you're in there, this is a pretty blue plate. It is obviously more robust than the stock plate. Could you put your stock plate back in there? Probably. But one thing this allows you to do, we talked about earlier with the early twin cams versus the late, the chain drive tensioner versus the hydraulic tensioner, you can upgrade your early model twin cam to a hydraulic setup like this one. So ours, we had a failure with the spring tensioner. We're replacing the plate, and we're going to make it a hydraulic tensioner setup. So this is a stock setup. This is a cam chain tensioner failure. This was all up here with a little shoe pressing hard on this cam chain to keep tension on it. And you can see over time, it just wears through. If you let it go too far, it explodes. And there's a second one on the back here. This is the back side of the cam plate. This is your secondary cam chain that keeps these cams in time together. And you could see how far that's burnt down. So the thickness here on the side is the thickness that the shoe used to be. It's been pressing down, that eventually eats away to nothing. And these are failure points in those early twin cam motors, and you can convert them over to hydraulic setups that are much better. So while we're in there, we can get rid of that stock plate. We can convert it over to a much better setup. The other thing to upgrade is S&S's oil pump. They have these oil pumps available for Milwaukee 8s and for twin cams. It is a much better pump than the stock pump. You're going to get more volume out of this pump, and it is going to scavenge better. This is a great upgrade, in my opinion. This bolts to that, and you have a really bulletproof valve train setup going on here with a really, really upgraded oiling system. So highly recommend the plate and the pump. When I do them, save my nickels and pennies and just do it all together. So even if you already have a hydraulic setup in there from the factory, the pump upgrade is well worth the money, and you have a better valve train setup. Lastly, let's talk about lifters. Actually, stock lifter is not terrible, but again, you're in there. Why not upgrade to a more robust piece like the S&S lifter? You can do things like put travel limiters in these lifters and make it just, again, a more bulletproof setup. While these, I wouldn't say are going to unleash a ton of horsepower, they're definitely going to make your engine setup work better because of the oiling system, and it's just going to be that much more bulletproof. And if you have the early model twin cam, you can make a big upgrade to the hydraulic setup. So now that we've talked about what you can put in there, let's talk about what tools you're going to need to get this job done. So like I said, we have videos for all these installs on cams, whether it be a Sportster, a twin cam, an M8, gear drive, or chain drive, we have you covered. For a Sportster, you won't need these specialty tools. But for a twin cam and an M8, you're going to need some. So you either need to buy them, or hopefully you have a buddy that's done a cam job and you can just borrow his. Right off the bat, a dial indicator. If you want to measure your crank run out for something like gear drives, you'll need a dial indicator. You can pick these up at local auto parts stores or like a Harbor Freight. Next, on the inside of your case, there are cam bearings like this one here. Always, always, always replace these cam bearings. All of these S&S kits come with new bearings. Now to pull those bearings out, to push these bearings in, you need one of these tools here. This one is for Milwaukee 8. This one is for a twin cam, and they are pretty well dummy proof. I've used them a bunch of times, which is proof positive anybody can use them. They're set up, you bolt the plate right to the case, and they have depth on them. When you put them on there, it won't let you put one in too far. So it comes with the puller, and it comes with the pusher, let's say. So you can pull these out. When you pull them out, they come out pretty easily. When you put them in, this sets the depth. So you tighten them down. When they stop going in, they're in. But there is no real way, I would say, to change these bearings safely without one of these tools. Otherwise, this is a completely a hand tool job. You don't even really need a lift. You could, if you had to, get this done on your garage floor. Might take you a little longer, but it's totally doable with hand tools, a couple of these tools on your garage floor. Now, if you're looking for more information on any of this stuff, we have a ton of stuff out there, whether that be install videos or how to measure crank run out, things like that. We have those videos done. Otherwise, go ahead and click those links on the info tab on your desktop or mobile device. It'll take you to the product detail page where you can read other Reddit reviews and more specs about cams, about tools, anything you want to know. If you're still looking for more information, feel free to reach out to our customer service team. They would love to talk to you about what works best for you, your motorcycle, and your budget. I am Patrick. Thank you for watching. Now go work on those motorcycles.